Hello, and welcome to the second lesson on superpowers. Today's lesson is a really exciting development of the lesson which you completed last week, and is concerned with looking at who the superpowers of today are. When you're working through this PowerPoint, there is a handout, and it would be advisable to have that open to work through as you're going through. And there are four main tasks. The final task is an exam question which you'll be expected to answer and return. So this lesson is focusing on how Britain gained and lost its superpower status in the world. It's understanding how a superpower can maintain its position of power by direct colonial control, using the case study of the British Empire. And it seeks to look at how hard and soft power can be used and was used in the example of the British Empire. The overview of this unit is that the British Empire maintained its power during the imperial era by direct colonial control. So when Britain was in charge of another country, such as India, that was referred to as a colony. You'll need to be aware of the rise and fall of the British Empire and the causes for this. And this is linked to key ideas within the spec. It's linked to the specification, it's 7.1, and some key terms that we'll be looking at today are geostrategic, superpower, regional power, and emerging power. This first image is a starter task that's looking at a map of the British Empire. It's a historical image that was produced around the time of 1886, and what it did was seek to celebrate the dominance of Britain in the world. And as you can see, the pink colour relates to Britain's former colonies. Ultimately, Britain developed to the point where it maintained a third of the world. Now, at the bottom, there are three questions for you to answer. You're to answer this on your handout, so you may need to pause the video now. When you're working through the handout, and that first task, task number 1, think very carefully about which characters in the image show power and what mechanisms they could be using to maintain this power. Pause the video now. Unpause the video. Okay, so you've completed task now 1 in full. This slide shows you the three different superpower positions. So the first image relates to a multipolar world, and that's where there are multiple superpowers. So you've got North America shown, China, India. Bipolar world is where there are only two competing superpowers. So historically that was North America and the USSR. And then the final situation is a unipolar world, and that's where there is one singular superpower, for example at the minute the United States. There is a final phrase which is referred to as a hyperpower. Last week you should have researched what a hyperpower was, and what I want you to do now is pause the video and answer the question which asks you why might it be difficult for a hyperpower to maintain its position. Think about economic factors, political factors, and social factors. The second task, task number 2, will require you to complete some research. It's asking you to think about what was the extent of the British Empire. And you're going to create a timeline of the British Empire, and while you're creating it, what you need to be doing is identifying key dates when the British Empire expanded, key events that were linked to that, mechanisms of power, so was its control over another country such as India gained by force, or was it gained by political negotiation? And then an evaluation as to how successful it was. This is labelled as task 3 on your handout. There's also some guidance on this slide. If you click on the web link below, this will take you to an interactive map that you need to click through. The key dates that you need to have down the bottom are shown along the top of the image, such as 1707, 1783, 1820, 1900s, 1920, 1950, 2008, and then the Commonwealth nations post 2008. Pause the video to do this. This task should take you an extended period of time. Please complete this on the highline. The third part of today's lesson links to Task 3. Task 3 relates to colonial India, and what you need to do is develop a case study bank about India. So you need to watch the video, and the link is at the top of the slide and on your handout. It's a 25-minute video, and it looks at how Britain managed to rule India. While the video is playing, what I want you to do is produce a flashcard noting down key facts, key dates, key time periods in which Britain established and maintained its power in India. Think about the methods that I've spoken about. Are they so hard or soft power mechanisms? And then what I want you to also include is some wider research on why ultimately India lost power or lost its colonial status from the United Kingdom. Finally, I want you to think about this extension question at the bottom, which are there any areas of India which still have the remains of colonial status today? Think in particular about infrastructure. Pause the video now. This task should take you up to an hour. Unpause the video. This slide now refers to the collapse of the British Empire, and it's a summary slide that I've put in here for you. It says, after the First World War, it became increasingly difficult for Britain to hold on to her empire. It became clear that Britain could no longer afford its empire, because we'd spent a significant amount of finance and resources financing the First World War. Britain had no right to rule peoples who did not want to be ruled by Britain. So throughout the war, people from the former colonies had fought on the side of the UK, and the message at that time was fight for freedom. Bearing in mind they'd laid their lives down for Britain in its war against Germany, it wasn't deemed appropriate for us to maintain colonial control over those regions. And then finally, Britain realised that the Royal Navy was not strong enough to protect all areas of the empire. So it gave colonies the option of to separate from the United Kingdom, separate from the British Empire or not, because it would have been an embarrassment for the nation if former colonies had been taken over because Britain was not in a position to defend them. Final task for today, task 4, refers to the figure below. This is blown up larger on your handout. What you need to do is answer this as a 10-mark question. So using figure 3 and your own knowledge, so that links back to today's lesson, explain why the pattern of economic power has changed over time. And what it's asking you to look at is how the position of economic power in the world has changed from when there was the former colonial British Empire, which was the main economy within the world, to today, where you've got the USA and China competing for superpower status. So how is it that it's shifted from that former British Empire with the loss of colonialisation to the point at which the main economic power is seen within the USA and China? Certain words to think about are globalisation, neoliberalism, and the growth of a global economy. That is the end of the lesson.